My name is Rob Bond, and I'm the chair of the history department here at MiraCosta College, and I would like to welcome you to a presentation from the Encinitas Historical Society, and it's entitled Public Goods, the Hidden Foundation of Our Daily Lives. And so I'd like to introduce our presenters for today from the Historical Society. To my immediate left is June Sekera. June Sekera is a public policy practitioner and scholar whose work focuses on the public economy and public goods production. June is an honorary senior research fellow at University College London, where she lectures on public goods and public value production. She's a senior research fellow at Boston University, where she works with the team at the Economics in Context Initiative. June is also a fellow at the New School for Social Research, where she directs the Heilbronner Center's Public Economy Project. She is the founder and executive director of the Public Goods Institute. At the Encinitas Historical Society, June directs the Public Goods Initiative, whose current project is The Invisibles, Hidden Histories and Revelations about the public goods we use daily, help create, and often don't see. Presentation. June holds a master's degree in public administration from Harvard's Kennedy School. Her book, The Public Economy in Crisis, was published in 2016. She has published a wide range of papers on the public economy, collective, non-market production, and public goods. Prior to her academic work, for over 20 years, June held programmatic policy development and management positions at federal, state, and local levels of government. What you're talking about. And then to my far left is Susan Sage, is the manager of Public Goods Initiative at the Encinitas Historical Society, where she develops and delivers educational presentations to the local community. She also works alongside the archivist to digitize, inventory, and catalog the Society's historical archives while training and guiding volunteers in preservation efforts. With over 30 years of experience in the technology sector, she has specialized in client engagement, project management, and education for global e-commerce companies. As a seasoned presenter who has worked with Fortune 1000 companies across North America, Europe, and Asia, Susan now channels her expertise in training and presentation into helping students understand the vital role of public goods in our daily lives, making local history relevant and accessible to the next generation. So, welcome, June and Susan.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for that introduction. And I just want to introduce quickly, too, from the Encinitas Historical Society. In the back, we have the president of CHS, Encinitas Historical Society, Carolyn Cope. And over here, in the bicycle garb, we have the archivist of the Encinitas Historical Society. So thank you, Rob, and thank you, Israel, for inviting us to come here today and talk to your students. Really appreciate it. It's been a really productive collaboration. I normally, I've written that bio a little bit shorter if I'd known. Anyway, as you can hear from the bio, I work on public goods, and I work on, my research is on public goods in the current era. And because of this collaboration and this event today, I did some research back historically on public goods, and so I learned a few things that I'll be talking about today. So thanks again for the invitation. We're looking forward at the end of the presentations to talking with you. If you have questions, we look forward to a conversation. If you have, so please hold your questions until the end if you have general questions. If you have a question about you didn't understand something, then just raise your hand and for clarification, we'll try to clarify whatever that is. So today we'll be talking about public goods, what they are and how we get them. And we'll be using public roads as the example of public goods that we'll be delving into today, using materials from the Encinitas Historical Society. So it's kind of interesting that Encinitas was actually once virtually an island surrounded by water, and public roads and bridges, made it up a regional hub So we're going to hear about this from, Susan's going to talk about the roads in Encinitas. So why are we talking about roads as the public goods example now? Well, that's because this year, 2026, has a lot of anniversaries for roads and things in Encinitas. So it's the 250th anniversary of El Camino Real, when it became in California a road that can handle horses and carriages. And it's the 100th anniversary of Highway 101 in Encinitas being designated as a federal highway. And it's also the 40th anniversary of the city of Encinitas, when it was actually became formalized as a city. And Caroline tells me there's going to be some celebrations about that in October. And so Susan's going to talk about the histories, in particular of El Camino Real and Highway 101, again drawing on the materials from the Encinitas Historical Society. So this is a map of the roads in Encinitas. Encinitas is about 19 square miles. From this road map, how many miles of publicly owned and maintained, publicly built and maintained streets, roads would you guess there are in Encinitas? 19, 44, 121, or 169? Somebody guess.
169.
Yeah, somebody said 169. Bingo. Yeah, a lot of roads, a lot of roads. But roads are just one type of public goods. There are multitudes. So public goods, these are just a very few of them. Public goods are things you use every day, often without thinking about them. So they are so common, they're so taken for granted that they essentially become invisible. So has anybody here heard the term public goods? And yeah, yes. Others, anybody raise your hand if you've heard the term? So, okay. The definition, if any of you are in economics, is anybody here taking economics? Okay. If you've heard a definition of public goods in economics, that's not the definition that I'm going to use here. The public goods definition in economics is, I won't go into that. I've written a lot about that. If you want to see what I've written, you can do that. But it's problematic and it doesn't relate to the real world in any way. So public goods in reality are products, services, rights, and benefits. They're things that polities create, societies create. They create them all together. And most importantly, they're things that you create, we all create. And how do we do that? We do that collectively by voting them into existence. And we pay for them all together. I'll go into that a little bit more in just a little bit. And Atul Gawande put it pretty simply. He said that public goods are necessities that can be provided only through collective effort and shared costs. This is a quote I've used in a lot of lectures, but it really fits well with this group because you're studying history. The history of civilization is a history of public goods. The more complex the civilization, the greater the number of public goods that need to be provided. This is by Martin Wolf. He's an economist who writes for the Financial Times, which is a newspaper based in London. So you're studying history, so I decided for this talk I would go back and look historically, like I said earlier, because I haven't really done that much before. So I looked a little bit at public goods going back to ancient civilizations, and in ancient civilizations, public goods were typically infrastructure, aqueducts, dams, wells, drainage, and sewer systems. So who here has heard of Mohenjo-Daro? You, yeah, okay. All right, I had not heard much of Mohenjo-Daro, heard of it basically in passing, but I looked in more detail for this today. And it's one of the most remarkable examples of extensive public goods creation in antiquity. Mohenjo-Daro was a city, it was part of the Harappan civilization. I have the historian from the Encinitas Historical Society to thank for clarifying, telling me that. And it was built around 2500 BCE, in an area that is now Pakistan. And they built wells, sewer systems, toilets, flush toilets, and drains. Yeah, they had flush toilets in the sense that most houses had wells, and or else groups of houses had wells, and so they actually had water. They had, to take into their houses and then flush the waste out and down you've heard of this? Yeah, okay. They then could flush the waste out the drains, and it went into the municipal sewer system. So they were conscious. I was just amazed when I saw this. They were conscious of course, getting water supply for the city. I mean, lots of civilization cities did that. But they also were conscious of public sanitation and the need for public health, and they figured out what to do about it as a polity. And it's really quite remarkable that they built all these things that you can see here. And then, of course, we have Roman roads. There are about 120,000 miles of roads that were paved and unpaved, and about 50,000 miles of those roads were paved. Then, moving to South and North America, there are many examples of public infrastructure in South America and North America. And one example is the Inca civilization, which was at its height about 500 years ago. And the Incas built a sophisticated system of roads. The empire went up and down the west coast of South America, and there were two principal roads, and those main roads were paved with paving stones or cobblestones. And it was very hilly, so they had all kinds of bridges they had to build too, very mountainous. And they even had rest stations, as you can see from the photo on the right there. And they had drainage systems. They had drainage systems that could drain the water off of the roads into the drains on the side and even underneath the roads. So how did the Incas civilization build these things? Well, the interesting thing is that they didn't have money, they didn't have monetary system, they didn't have money in coins. So there was required public service called anybody know what that's called? It starts with M. I just learned this myself. I know that Rob knows and Israel knows. It's the mita, I think that's how you pronounce it? Yeah, which is required public service. And so that is the way that instead of paying taxes, since there was no money, instead of paying taxes, they had required public service. They had to build things. So the roads were built, and all sorts of other public infrastructures were built through the system of required public service that all men at least had to do. So the government basically mobilized a huge labor force to build roads and other things, and mobilize these resources. So moving to Mexico. Mexico is known in particular for aqueducts. I've been there, lots of aqueducts. The Aztec civilization built aqueducts, and this happens to be a rendering of one that was built bringing fresh water for cooking and drinking from Chapultepec Springs to Tenochtitlan being what is now Mexico City. The construction for this began in 1418, a pretty sophisticated aqueduct according to this rendering. So moving now to the 18th and 19th century, the current era, modern era in the United States. I want to talk about two public goods. I could talk about hundreds, but I'll just start with the fire service. Fire service is an example of the public good. Basically, before we had municipal fire departments, which it didn't exist in towns and cities, before the towns and cities created the municipal departments, there were fire brigades, volunteer fire brigades, but there were also private fire service subscription companies. So houses subscribed to some sort of fire protection subscription service, And they put the, what's called fire mark on the side of their house, and that designated which fire company would, come to put the fire out at your house. So this is a fire mark from Charleston. I think it's 19th century. And public municipal fire departments didn't come on in. Welcome,
There's some
everybody.
seats
Sorry.
in the back, folks.
Maybe give it a second, because there's a line now.
A lot of chairs.
You keep going, there's more. You just gotta keep going. There you go.
There's a chair here.
So brave.
We got a couple of seats up
So,
here.
look at that, two right there. We got two right there. Just keep going.
Move this back.
Here, walk with me, so we're not.
Some glass just got out.
Some class just got in.
Right there's that.
Here, yeah.
Oh, there's still seats. Look, we're gonna make it. There's a few back there. We have friends. We're familiarity now back there. In that corner.
Are you all history students coming in?
No, these are sociology students.
Oh, sociology. All right, that's my
I don't even
major.
know if we're supposed to, are we? Whoa.
Okay, well, you know what? I'm just,
I don't think I made it around to the back.
I'm going to really quickly show you what you missed. You missed the Mohenjo-Daro, an ancient civilization that built all of these kinds of water sewer systems, flush roads, drains, all these sorts of things. And the Roman roads, of course, and the Incas that built this road system and even had rest stops. I mean, all sorts of things that going back historically. These were public goods from ancient times, which I have talked some length about a few minutes ago, sorry. But you're late, you didn't catch that. And then we have the Aztecs, and this is an aqueduct from Chapultepec, from Tenochtitlan, from bringing water into what's now Mexico City, was now called Tenochtitlan back in the 1400s. And we just got done talking about the fire service, which became a public good in modern times in the United States in about the 1860s. And this is a picture of the Encinitas Fire Station, or one of the Encinitas fire stations. And now, compared to the fire brigade, volunteer fire brigades that existed before and the private fire companies, now we have municipal fire departments where if you get a fire in your house now, you dial 911 and the fire trucks come out quickly. Before, you had to call a private fire company or wait for a volunteer fire brigade. So the other type of public good that I want to mention from the current era, modern times, is education. We're in a public school of education here. So education, universal public education didn't happen in the United States until about the 19th century. It started in Massachusetts with something called the Common Schools Movement. And that's when the polity, the people, voted into existence universal public education. And what do I mean by universal public education? I mean, you can go to school and it's free, right? It's free because we all pay for it together, mainly through state and local taxes. So today we have elementary schools that are free, right? We have high schools that are free, and we have community college systems. Every state has a community college system that are very low cost compared to going to a university. Why is that? Because we pay collectively for the elementary education and for subsidizing the cost of community college systems. In California, legislation in 1907 created junior colleges up and down the state, and then it was formalized into the community college system throughout California in 1967. And MiraCosta College was created in 1934, so it's your 100th anniversary coming up pretty soon. This is a picture of Encinitas from 1887. And that building, this building here at the top of the hill, is the one-room schoolhouse, public schoolhouse in Encinitas, which is where the Encinitas Historical Society is now housed. So if you go over to the Encinitas Historical Society, you'll see the one-room schoolhouse and all the things that are in there, the desks and so forth. It was built in 1883, public school. So does anybody know, can anybody guess what that little teeny building is up on the left-hand corner? Doghouse. No, not a doghouse, what?
Outhouse.
An outhouse. That's right, it's an outhouse. That's the outhouse that the students had to use, kind of far from the school. So Encinitas didn't have a municipal sewer system like Mohenjo-Daro did more than 4,000, 5,000 years ago. We didn't have that here at the time. I've used the term polity several times. And so I just want to pause for a second and talk about what that means, what the term, what it's defined as and how I've been using it. A polity is an organized body of people that can do a couple of things. A polity can mobilize resources and take action. A polity, society, can be, but when it's organized, we call it a polity, can be organized in a bunch of different ways. It can be organized as a monarchy, an oligarchy, a democracy, or other forms of organization. In fact, in Mohenjo-Daro, we don't really know, Rob, how that was organized. There was apparently some sort of centralized government that orchestrated the building, but we don't really know how that society organized, how that polity was organized. We know more about the Incas. But if a polity is organized as a democracy, the way that resources get mobilized is through voting. So voting authorizes the expenditure of money from our collective purse, which then enables the production of public goods. So public goods today, let's talk about how they work today. If you want to buy a toaster or a grill or a kitchen table or a car, you go to a store or you go online. But what if you want clean air? What do you do? Where do you go? What if you want to be able to drive across the country without paying tolls? What if you want to go to the beach without having to pay an entry fee? What if you want to go to a restaurant and not worry about whether you're going to get sick or poisoned by the food? What if you want to make sure the water coming out of your tap is safe to drink? How do you get those things? We just assume that they're there. How do we get them? That's what I work on, how we get these things. That's what I study and write about and work on. So there's two ways in the modern era, not the Mohenjo-Daro or the Incas, but because there are other ways. But now there's essentially in most countries today, there's two ways to get the things that you need or that you want. You can pay as an individual customer through the market system. That's what we mostly hear about in economics and otherwise. So that's how you get the things on the left-hand side there. Or you can pay jointly as a polity through the public economy system. The public economy system is the topic that I work on. So that's how you get the types of things that are on the right-hand side there. So to sum up, how we create public goods. Public goods are created two ways, through collective choice and shared costs. So collective choice means just joint decision-making through voting. So collective choice works two ways. You either choose directly or you choose indirectly. Indirectly, you choose representatives to represent your interests, right? You choose a mayor, a city council member, a state legislator, a member of Congress. Sometimes you get to choose directly, which you do through, in California, through referenda or initiatives. So you go to the polling place or on the ballot, there's a proposal. You can vote for it or you can vote against it. And then there's shared costs. Right now, the way that we do this is through taxes and municipal bonds. The Inca civilization did it a very different way. They didn't have a financial system. They did it a very different way to get the things that they needed and wanted. And I just want to stop a minute here and talk about joint decision making. Joint decision-making is not all sort of happiness and consensus and agreement. Joint decision-making means that there's disagreements, there's arguments, there's differing interests, there's the interest of the people, there's commercial interests, there's interests of the community. So there's argument and there's, arguments. And Susan's going to talk a little bit about the disputes and arguments that took place when I-5 was located through Encinitas, the location of I-5. She'll talk about that. But eventually, all these disagreements and disputations and arguments get settled. There's a decision, there's a vote. There's a vote. It happens. So a decision gets made, and that's what enables the action to happen. So public goods, again, I'll try to rush through so we can get to the next section, but we use them every day. GPS was started by the Department of Defense. Weather forecasting is a National Weather Service and NOAA, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. Clean water from our faucets is federal, state, and county. Municipal service or responsibility. Sewer systems are waste managers, that's municipal. Food poisonings that don't happen, that's the state and county inspectors that we don't even see going to our restaurants and our supermarkets. The street lights at work, we don't even notice them, that's municipal. The bridges that don't fall down, we don't notice them. Federal, state, and local, and people's bank savings that are not lost when there's a recession or a depression, that's the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. So the irony, and I've written quite a bit about this, the irony is that there's a paradox in public goods. When they're successful, you don't see them. It's when they break that you notice them, when the bridge, falls down, or the lights don't work, or there's a crack in the sidewalk, or whatever. That's when you notice them, and that's what's wrong with government, right? You don't notice them the rest of the time. So this is actually stuff that's in the brochure, the little blue brochures that are on your desk there. So you use them all day long. In the morning, you get up and check the weather forecast, you flush the toilet, brush your teeth, clean water, you attend college during the daytime, lunch is safe to eat, you just assume because it's been inspected. In the evenings, foods are safe to eat, you just assume. You go down the sidewalk on a public sidewalk to a public park or under public street lights, and every day you use GPS. The air you breathe is clean because there's regulations that prevent pollution, and you go to a free public library or a public beach. But public goods are not free. They just seem free because we all pay for them. They appear to be free, or else they're very low cost, where and when we use them. So roads. We're going to talk about roads next. We're going to talk about roads. Should we pay together for roads, or should we pay individually, pay a toll every time we use a street or a sidewalk or a bike lane? Of course, polities decide. Voters make choices. So what would you choose? So you can think about that as Susan's going to talk to us about public roads in Encinitas and their histories. Susan.
Thank you, Jane.